we were talking, Peter, about your ability to sit on social media and discuss things,
Yeah.
like Twitter, and you go into debate with people who have like weird takes on Israel or weird takes on other political issues. And I notice I can't do it anymore. Like I cannot be on social media, and I already had it for a while. And I wonder, like, what is it that makes you more resistant than me? And I think one aspect may actually be that you have never been in a position that uh, you are ethnically connected to a minority group. Like, for example, I'm half Dutch, half Algerian, and I remember back in the day when social media became big. The in the Netherlands,
Mm.
the uncensored, endless, limitless racist takes online, on Facebook, on news sites, on Twitter, and just have to handle these blows, these emotional, mental blows continuously because it's these are continuous attacks on an extension of your humanity, and
Mm.
and I internet is exceptionally damaging and unwelcoming and hostile to people who don't fit the norm, at least in the Western norm, in our social media platforms. And I couldn't take that anymore. It was very bad for my mental health. And
Mm.
I think that plays a role in the fact that you're still able to do it because you can create some distance, I think, to many of the
Yeah.
things that I cannot create that distance. Because even if I hear stuff about Palestinians, I extend that to my father's family in Algeria. Why?
Mm.
Because all these tropes that are being used against Palestinians are in extension being used to all Middle Easterners. So it always has that tinge of personal blows, and I think that goes for a lot of social minority groups, that the internet for them is much different, all these debates and these attacks, than, for example, somebody who comes from a white heterosexual majority group, to talk in these very identitarian kind of terms. It's true. Like, I think when you can create that kind of distance, like, for example, I would see a debate between, let's say, two ethnic groups in Bangladesh or something. I would still understand what's the good side and the bad side, or the moral side and the immoral side, so to speak, but I would have more distance. But with these things, Western racism, Western ethnic relationships, and political relationships is has that extra layer of personal harm, I would say, with myself as a mixed individual. And I can imagine much more even with people who are more severely marginalized in society. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you can even bring it back to some basic psychology, like the schemas we have for different ideas, concepts, like racism. If you haven't experienced, like, been victimized by racism, then you don't have those memories and the affect, the emotion attached to them in your schema for racism. You can still understand it much the same way. The information might be much the same, but the way it's actually encoded in your brain is not going to be connected to memories. Whereas someone who does have memories and experiences and emotional experiences, that all comes back when the very concept is, comes up. So, like, we can have the same memes in our heads, but they're qualitatively different from person to person because they can be connected to actual experiences and the feelings you felt during that experience.
Exactly. And in my case, I mean, I was a little kid growing up in the north of the Netherlands, in a province called Frisia. And Frisia is the most northern and ethnic group of the Netherlands. My mom is Frisian. These are the northern ethnic group of the Netherlands. And they are actually very different from the rest of the Netherlands, because the Frisians were part of were the north of the Netherlands, north of Germany, part of Scandinavia. It's a very different ethnic group. They also have their own language. We don't have a dialect. We actually have a language there. And they were they were for a very long part of the Viking rule, under Viking rule, okay, because they were very similar to Scandinavian Viking culture because the Frisians believed in nature gods, and they were against like Christianity. So these were they also fought the Christians and that kind of stuff, and you can see that it's a very similar culture. So for hundreds of years, if I'm not mistaken, they were a Viking, part of the Viking rule, and that has a lot to do with those. I should investigate it more about those nature gods like Wodan and stuff, and anyway, that's all historical stuff. I'm not too familiar with that, but of course I come from a Frisian family, and we speak the Frisian language. But don't forget, Frisians are hyper Northern European in the sense that literally everyone in my mother's family is, because they did some genetic. My mom actually did a genetic investigation with her family. They found that interesting, like just to see, because my mother was always hoping she had some gypsy blood or some Jewish blood or something, because she wanted to, and she likes to be exotic,
Mm-hmm.
and they did a genetic test, and they literally, as far as they could reach, everything is Northern European. Like there is not a single drop of mixture in them, like some exotic Southern mixture, which my mother hoped. and so you can imagine, there comes me, the mixed boy, into that family, and that province, Frisia, or Friesland, as we say it in Dutch, Friesland. And I've always with an Algerian name, so I've, from childhood on, I have experienced, like these subtle and not so subtle marginalizations based on not fitting the norm. So that has always been a very sensitive aspect of my life, very sensitive aspect of my life, and that has always also made me an individual who is always fighting against that stuff, both in my academic work, in my non-academic work. It has like literally shaped me. And to get back what we were discussing about, when I sit on Twitter and I see all these dumb people say such ridiculous and evil stuff about other human beings, whether they are sexual minorities, whether they are different gender identities, whether they are ethnic minorities, I just can't take it, man. I cannot take that stuff. Like I cannot be on platforms where that kind of vile stuff has free reign.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. Like just as an example, I saw something I think on Twitter. It was like an advertisement for some racist whites only dating site, and the guy was like promoting it, and it had some picture of some woman. It was probably a stock photo, so I feel sorry for the woman that actually posed for the photo, and then they used it for this garbage. But my emotional feeling is just kind of disgust. It's just like that makes me feel kind of nauseous, but also just, it's yeah, I guess that's the emotional reaction I have. Whereas if I had those experiences of, hatred directed against me because of my ethnic or whatever other identity, that my emotional reaction would probably be a lot different, because it would be reactivating the memories and the pain I felt in the past from those experiences. Whereas now, I
and
I
the
can take it more
anger
detached. Yeah, anger, right.
and the anger of those people who just flap that out, of the unwillingness to understand or empathize with what their stupid behavior, the effect it has on people. Because, like I said, because they're so ignorant of the effects and of the pain and of the suffering, they don't even contemplate what their words might be doing. And the only thing that would change these people is when they are put in that situation themselves. But you don't, how do you say that? You don't think others deserve that, because then you're just as bad. You know what I mean? I don't think people deserve it. But
Mm.
like, it's just so frustrating that many of those people are unwilling to even understand or contemplate that, maybe with the stuff you're doing is really hurtful. It's really damaging to people and social fabric of society. Because you know what they will say then? Then they will say like, oh, feelings hurt, or what is it always, that kind of meme-ish kind of things that they say, like
Snowflake.
snowflake, exactly. Oh, snowflake hurt. And then I'm like, it's so easy to say when you never suffered that yourself, you privileged piece of shit. You know what I mean? And that all these privileged older men in the West, like a Jordan Peterson or something, who say, oh, snowflake, you heard this and that. Yeah, you didn't grow up, man, having that shit happen to you all the time and what that did to you, and don't get me wrong, I'm still very privileged, in many, many, many aspects. But I can understand it, because even I felt it in subtle and sometimes not so subtle ways. But imagine people who are really not fitting the mold, stereotypical people, or people from very marginalized identities. And then you say they're snowflake, as a person who has never suffered it and just can bask in privilege. Fucking hate that, man. But then they'll say, no, I'm working class. I'm working class. I suffer too. I'm white working class. I suffer too. I totally agree. You suffer too. And guess what? Social minorities suffer that too, like you. So you're both brothers in that sense. Plus, they suffer what you don't suffer, namely that they don't look in a way that makes them fit, that their social background, their religion is not a way that fits, that their name is not a way that fits, which makes their life tenfold worse than yours, even though you're poor, you're working class, because it interacts with many other aspects than simply class. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
What can you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so yeah, that's the reason why I'm not somebody who is very active on social media in that sense. No, I cannot maintain that distance, Peter.
Yeah. Well, I have a long way to go before I achieve like complete non-attachment. I really need to like study with some Buddhists and learn how to actually practice that,
Yeah,
because
but
in
at
the
least,
world
man,
you really need
people
non-attachment.
like you. Oh, sorry, man, I'm interrupting you.
No, I'm just saying, like, given what's going on in the world, the most kind of logical predictions for what our next 5, 10, 20 years are looking like, it's pretty grim. So cultivating some non-attachment would be really, really key right now.
Yeah, people like you are very important. I always say, like, if that all that vile right wing crap doesn't get some kind of pushback, we're lost. We're lost anyway. So, even though you cannot contain your emotions, which I can totally understand, I can too. I cannot too. But at least, there are people like you who are still there to do some pushback. I think that that is so important, man, that they stay, because many people are like me. They just can't take it anymore. They leave. And guess who control the narrative from that moment on? All these loudmouths. They are
Yeah.
the ones who control the narrative.
Yeah. I mean, on that earlier point of you know, hateful people who've never experienced the pain that people experience who are discriminated against or hated because of something that they were born with. Uh, I haven't reviewed the like writings about this in a while, but I remember there was an example of like a former KKK member who got de-radicalized, and I'm pretty sure the argument he was making is that you have to get rid of the ideas, the beliefs first. That's the key thing. Like break apart that belief structure wherein you're a member of a superior group, and you if you can show someone that that's a faulty belief, it's just not true, then you can make progress on every other front. But you have to get that core, because it's that core belief structure that allows everything else. If you really believe, because you have all of these ideas, this specious reasoning, this selective evidence, and mostly ignorance of the majority of evidence, that's going to completely block you from understanding the kind of point you're making, or any other argument that anyone else would make, because that belief structure will completely change the interpretation of what you're trying to argue.
Yeah, and then I don't know if I fully agree, but it depends on how you see this, because that gives me the idea that you can win people over with facts. Like, if as long as you show them that the belief structure is not right, you can win them over. But if there's one thing we've shown, is that the left is always very good at showing the facts to that the right is wrong on pretty much anything they say. But it doesn't work, because the right knows how to touch people's emotion and convinces people. We all know that it's the rich who take away money and not Mexican so-called rapists, as Trump says. But yet, because it really touches on people's fear, emotions, anger, etc., they rather believe that a significant section of society than coming with facts showing, like, the numbers, it's not the case. But if you say, hey, you can convince people to get away from their ideology using emotional appeals, then I agree with you. And what I think is the most powerful emotional appeal is when they become personally emotionally invested. That is, give a racist a mixed race grandson or granddaughter, and see how many of them change it to anti-racists. I'm not even kidding you.
Yeah. When I say, like, break down a belief structure, I'm not naive enough to think that just shooting them with facts is going to all of a sudden, do the trick. It's a holistic matter to break down a belief structure, and things like you mentioned, like having a personal connection that challenges or flies in the face of your belief structure, like having a child of a race that you think is inferior. That's the sort of thing that helps the belief structure break apart, and create space for a different belief structure to be built in its stead. I think that example of the former KKK guy, I think he was converted actually by an Afro-American, like, I don't know how he would define himself, like not a crusader is the wrong word, but, like, his activism is trying to deprogram white supremacists. So, like, that sort of thing, it's not just facts. It's certainly plenty of facts, because you need to break apart that belief structure and replace it with something else. But the very presence of someone that the person initially thinks is a member of some inferior race, connecting with them, like that's an extra factual aspect of the process that is probably just as essential as the information content.
Right. Now, I'm personally somebody who thinks a discriminated individual is not their obligation, or even their task, even the moral task or moral obligation, to convince a racist to not be racist. I mean, there's one thing I would never do, is try to convince somebody who doesn't think you're human enough that you're human. Okay, these people, I think that's the task of their fellow in-group members, to show them the wrong side of their ways. I don't feel that's the task of minority group members to, oh, please look, we're also human. Yeah, that doesn't work. You know what I mean? But that's a different discussion.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, that is a nice segue into I think what we should discuss, which is very much related to this. And I think a lot of people who are watching this have already seen it, but I still think it's very worthy to discuss. And that is that video of that former high up in the United States government, Obama. What was it? What was his position?
He was something in the State Department tasked with responsibility for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.